Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about accessory lifts. And something I see out there that's very concerning for me is that I'll see coaches and lifters and other people saying, "Hey, the weight doesn't matter on accessory work. It's just accessory work. We're not trying to compete in the accessory Olympics." They'll make statements like that, but the truth is, it absolutely matters. Now, I'm going to give some context for that. I am not talking about single joint exercises. Because if they're talking about single joint exercises, I'm going to agree. Going to failure is probably all that matters. And this is probably the very last movement you do for a muscle in a training session. Because if you're usually serious about getting jacked and strong, you're not standing around doing 3 different single joint exercises for a muscle. You're just not doing it. We're getting into silly bodybuilder stuff that really it doesn't work for most people. So you're probably only doing one single joint movement for a muscle, and you're probably not doing one for every muscle in the body. And in that case, you're fatigued already, you've done all your tension. As long as you take those to failure, they're fine. Because we're not trying to take our big movements to failure all the time. If we do, what happens? We get too fatigued, we get too beat up. So again, stuff you'll see me doing in this video, Romanian deadlift, a weighted dip, good morning, incline benching, all right, stuff like this. We don't want to take these to failure, but these are very serious accessory movements that put a lot of muscle on you. But if we're talking about a curl, concentration curl, a lateral raise, a hamstring curl, right? Those are fine. Take them to failure. The weight probably doesn't matter, but you should see a general improvement. In other words, if over several months you're not gaining reps to failure on that, or you're not increasing the weight that you can hit the same number of reps with failure, it is a bad sign. You're not in a good place with that movement. You haven't caused any real muscle growth. But when we come to our bigger movements, we have to look at these and say, well, do we have percentages of maxes to work off of? Because if we have that, we can always go off percentages. And I program at least half of my clients, their accessory work off percentages, because we max on those accessories. Or we have close enough proxies. I can use a percentage of their bench, a percentage of their deadlift. And since they max every week on conjugate anyways, we'll always have percentages. But you know what? I'll say even there, we should be pushing for some progression. In other words, even if I hand someone a flat percent and say, hey, I want you to do 3 sets of 10 at 70%, a lot of times I want them to AMRAP the last set. And if they can get more than 10 reps, we maybe need to test that max again, or they can add a little bit of weight. But here's the thing. If I get a lifter and let's say they're working at 70% of their max and they've been doing 225 on that lift for 10s, and they bump it to 235 and they get 10s, they better hit a 10-pound PR next time we test the max on it. Or I know that they're sandbagging on me. But let's talk about stuff we don't have maxes on, because all these movements I'm doing here, I haven't maxed on, at least at the time that I did these in a while, other than the good mornings. And I do max on those and I program off those. But I still use a little bit of wiggle room. And I think in this video, everything done is like 6 rep sets. 7 if I can get an extra rep, right? If I'm strong enough to. But on movements like this, let's say you're doing a bunch of 6s or 8s. All right, the weight on the bar matters. Tension matters. Okay, so we are going to the accessory Olympics. We are going to the accessory Olympics because it comes back over to what are we trying to do? We're trying to increase tension on the muscle. Yes, I know that our goal is hypertrophy for most supplemental movements. It should be hypertrophy. That's why we're doing them. There will be movement pattern carryover. So weight does matter, but we're usually trying to hypertrophy muscles. But if we're not doing really high reps on these, the tension absolutely matters a lot because we are trying to get stronger at these movements. And if you're just doing 6 reps and you never get stronger, that movement's not doing anything for you anymore at a certain threshold, right? And we can rotate movements. I mean, that's an option. If you stall on a movement, you can rotate it out. And when you get back to it, hopefully you get to work close to where you were before, and then you can push back through it again. But one of the reasons that we rotate these movements is not just to avoid overuse, it's so that we can build muscle with other movements and then come back and progress again. Because maybe we've stalled on it. Maybe your weighted dip is not progressing anymore. Maybe you're stuck at 80 pounds for 6s and you can't get any heavier. without dropping reps and you've been stuck there. Okay, you might want to take the weighted dip out. Of course, you could change the rep range on it. You replace it with another movement, some decline benching or whatever you need to do. Not that I'm a fan of the decline bench, but I just threw that in there. Get stronger at it. Come back and see if you've progressed on it. But we should be pursuing progressive overload on these movements. The same thing with good mornings, and I hate that when people say stuff like, well, this should really be the maximum weight you use for a good morning. Well, you guys are watching me right here do 331 with a safety bar for rep work. Okay, with a cambered bar, I can max 555 on the good morning. This is one of the reasons I've hit the big squats that I've hit in the past. The good morning, it has tremendous carryover to your squats. Tremendous carryover. And if you don't get stronger on it, it doesn't work. And people can argue all they want that, well, you should only do about 225 on this. We're not trying to be in the good morning Olympics. Well, what happens when you're not growing from 225 anymore? You're now just wasting a slot. You're basically just maintaining. You are taking that accessory movement and you are maintaining what it already did for you before, and you're not progressing. Because if you can do 3 sets of 10 with 225 and you've been doing that for a year on a good morning, you stopped growing by the third time you did it, right? About 3 workouts with the same stimulus stops having adaptation. You did not get any stronger from it. Now you say, well, my squat went up. Your squat went up because you did something else. The good morning is not doing anything anymore. Okay, you need to be working on getting that 225 to 255. Same thing, let's say you're incline benching and you've been stuck at the same weight. You either need to rotate it out or you need to push harder on the progression. We don't just say, well, I've always done 205 for 5 reps, 6 reps, whatever, and it works great. No, you're not creating new adaptations. You either have to get more weight on the bar or you have to get more reps. And I'm talking about it, the form stays the same. And no, this whole nonsense of, well, we could just make the reps harder. Okay. Again, we're getting into the silly bodybuilder stuff that doesn't work for most people. Right? And we're not going to get into why it works for bodybuilders. It should be obvious. It's not going to work for the majority of you out there. Muscles care about tension. They care about workload. And if we want to get stronger, we need to be increasing the workload. We need to be increasing the mechanical tension on our supplemental lifts. Even if they're high rep sets, even if they're 10 rep sets, even if they're 12 rep sets. We need to see the tension increase over time, or they are not doing anything to make us bigger or to make us stronger. So yes, it does matter. And I'm not saying we use bad form on supplemental lifts to achieve this. No, we should actually be using really strict form on supplemental lifts, most of them. But the weight matters, and anyone telling you otherwise is full of it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.